Welcome to the ACC, SMU, and sorry for treating you so rudely in your own gym.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, gang. What's up? It's Monday, January 6th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. It's the only daily Duke show out there. I'm your host today, Isaac Schade, host of Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Tar Heels. Don't tell anybody. I'm filling in for our great guy, JJ Jackson, while he's off on vacation. It is an honor and privilege to be with you all today. Seriously, even though I host not only college basketball, but Tar Heels, I have so much respect for the Blue Devils program. And am elated to be able to talk with you all today about everything going on right now. So you're joining me at the place to get your Duke content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And I want to sincerely thank you for joining me for your first listen or watch of the day. Special shout out goes all to all the everydayers that are hanging out with us today. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on the show today, we are going to unpack Duke's 89-62 win over SMU on Saturday. We'll talk some big picture stuff. I want to get into what I'm going to call the Natty five takeaways from the game. And then we'll look ahead a little bit because I don't see much that's going to keep Duke from steamrolling this whole conference. And it just keeps looking more and more likely. So we'll get into all of that coming up on the show today. But let's dive right on into this thing. Duke 89, SMU 62. This game was in Dallas. Super impressive road win for the Blue Devils in their first trip to Dallas, with SMU now part of the ACC. And look, this was just I was going to say solid, but it's more than solid. It just complete team performance at a very high level. If you heard the show, I got to join JJ, I think it was last week ahead of the Virginia Tech game to preview that one. I joked that I had put a hex on SMU when I was down there in Dallas over Christmas with my family. And you know what? It worked. So you're welcome, everybody. Look, both teams bring 7-game winning streaks into this game. Of course, Duke's now extends to 8 while SMU's is done. Theirs is over. What's really intriguing to me is that 7 of the 8 wins in Duke's streak have come since Sion James has come into the starting lineup in place of Caleb Foster. A move, with all due respect to Caleb Foster, I think that is the right move for this team, and it's proven to be great. Frustratingly, this game was on the CW, man. I can't with that. Can we do something about that, ACC, please? No more. Critically of note, before we get into the game itself, I'm sure you're well aware of this, but no Coach Scheyer in this game was apparently struggling with a big illness over the weekend. And so, of course, Chris Carrawell steps in, does a phenomenal job, as you expect. This team is already so well prepared. Coach Carrawell joked that Coach Scheyer was blowing them up all weekend. Just couldn't stay away, and understandably so, right? You want to be with your team. And thankfully, according to Duke, all indications are that he will be back as acting head coach, doing all his duties tomorrow as Duke hosts Pitt. Big time game, Coach Capel coming home. That should be a lot of fun. Now, anyway, coming into this game, I got to be honest, I really wasn't sure what to make of it. Not because of Duke or how I thought Duke would perform or anything with that, but because I feel like I don't have a good handle yet on SMU. This is a team that has been really good this season, just 2 losses coming into this game. They are currently 41st in the net, but they were 33rd coming into the game. They were 3rd highest ACC team in the net ahead of this game, behind only Duke, who was 3rd, and Pitt, who was 12th. They were ahead of Clemson, barely 34th, and North Carolina at 46th, Louisville at 50th, and everyone else in this conference. But when I look at their schedule, with SMU's schedule, there's really not all that much on it in terms of like high quality. Like their best wins coming in are over LSU and Washington State. And I know most of the SEC is really good and LSU's fine, but it's like, they're lower tier. And then Washington State is now in the West Coast Conference with the Pac-12 falling apart. Both those teams are in the 60s at Ken Palm, and that's SMU's best 2 wins. Their two losses are to Butler by 11. Butler's in the 70s at Ken Palm. That one, I guess you kind of are like, really? But then Mississippi State, who's, I think, like very underappreciated nationally, lost to them by just 5 at home. That's more than acceptable for this SMU team. So it's hard to know what to make of it. My eyes told me from watching SMU that they were a solid, maybe not elite or exceptional, but a really good team. They're top 3 in the net, again, in the ACC. And I believe they are going to be a formidable opponent for a lot of teams in the ACC, right? Like for me as Locked On Tar Heels host, SMU's coming to Chapel Hill tomorrow. I'm very concerned about that game. As you all know, how Carolina is not playing well, right? And so all of that for SMU. They're hosting what's probably one of the biggest games they've likely ever had at Moody Coliseum with Duke coming to town. And I set all that up to give props to SMU to make it all the more impressive that Duke just comes into the building and absolutely wallops them. Yes, the first half had some close moments, but then the second half, it's like a runaway. And again, this is a solid, respectable SMU team, and Duke still did that to them. Makes me respect Duke all the more than I already did. SMU, they had a lead in this game at 3-2, and that was it. Never again led. Duke opens up a double-digit lead just over 4 minutes into the game. SMU at one point cut it back down to 2. It was like 18-16, but Duke pushes right back out and then holds SMU at arm's length basically the rest of the first half and then blows it open in the second half. In fact, Duke opened up back to a double-digit lead like 2.5 minutes into the second half, and it never again fell back into single digits. Cooper Flagg, what else can we keep saying about this young man? Does it again. 24 points, 7 of 12 from the floor, wildly efficient, 2 of 2 from 3, 8 of 8 from the free throw line, 11 boards, getting that double-double, 3 assists, did have 3 turnovers. That's the one thing that every now and again is a bugaboo for Cooper Flagg. But look, with everything else that he does well, you're more than willing to overlook some of those things. 2 blocks and 1 steal, and only had to play 32 minutes in this game because of the score and because of Duke's depth. Really, really impressive stuff. Had multiple really impressive plays, but perhaps the one that I was like, oh my goodness, the most of was that tip dunk he had midway through, a little over midway through the first half. There's this really nice little back cut along the baseline from Sion James. Malik Brown finds him, but it was a tough angle for Sion trying to get that reverse on the other side of the basket. Just a hard angle, comes off the front of the rim. Dumbly, nobody from SMU finds Cooper Flagg, and he just comes flying in for this vicious dunk. See you later. That thing was beautiful. And even I thought Cooper could have had more points than he did. I thought there were multiple times that he was fouled, just no whistle, and it should have been, quite frankly. This, for his career now, is his 7th 20-point game in Duke's first 14 games of this season. It's his 4th time hitting 24 points. Kind of crazy that he's done that exact number so many times. Just 2 points off his career high, 26 points that he scored in that game against Kentucky. Now, as for Sion James, I just want to mention him again because not much for him in the scoring column in this game. 6 points, 2 of 5 from the field. But what's so impressive and I think important for what he did was that he had 8 assists to just 1 turnover in this game. I just find that so critically important, especially, with what we talked about with him coming into the starting lineup in place of Caleb Foster. And a lot of that is because if there's one bugaboo season long that concerns me, really at all for Duke, and we're nitpicking, right? There's just not many holes or weaknesses with this team. It is the lack of a just true honest to goodness point guard. Tyrese Proctor's looked a lot better this year, man. It's what he needed to do last year that he didn't, that he is finally doing this year. But with Sion James and his experience that he brings over, I really like that change. Love what he did in this game. 8 assists, 7 of which were in the first half against just 1 turnover. Yes, more of that. Now, Mason Gillis didn't score a ton, but did he have 2 of the very most important and critical baskets in this game? Plus, the defense for Duke shows up yet again. Did you expect anything else to happen? All that and more as we get into what I'm calling the Natty Five. 5 takeaways from this game that I thought were critical to Duke bringing home a win from Dallas. We'll get to that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, from big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need, man, for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. How about some ACC regular season champion odds from FanDuel? Duke, wildly the front runner in this thing, minus 470. Followed by Clemson at plus 600, Pitt at plus 1900, and off to Carolina, fourth best odds at plus 2100. Wow, Duke is so heavily favored. It's crazy. Check it all out at fanduel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's at fanduel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, gang, it's time for what I'm calling the Natty Five. 5 national championships for Duke, 5 takeaways from this game for me. Number 1, I thought that Mason Gillis had what might have been 2 of the most important momentum swinging baskets in this entire game. At one point in the first half, as we're getting towards the final couple minutes, SMU, as I mentioned, had a 3-2 lead at one point, cut it to 2 at 18-16, and then Duke just pulls back away. One other kind of push that SMU made, they cut the lead down to 4 at 32-28. It was all thanks to an 8-2 run. They were down 30-22 and just go on this little run. Well, here comes Mason Gillis, hits a 3-pointer, and a Boopy Miller miss on the other end, which I love Boopy Miller's name. Remember the Wake Forest transfer. Mason Gillis comes down and gets a layup on the other end to push the lead right back to 9 with just over 3 minutes to go before halftime. And again, I thought that was such a critical juncture in the game because SMU's making this run. You get the home crowd behind you, and it's like, okay, maybe we can push it to keep it at 4 or 2 or maybe even tied by halftime. If so, that'd be great. Mason Gillis, with all his veteran experience, steps in, didn't do a ton in this game from a scoring standpoint, but these 5 points, man, were so important. And then from that moment on, the lead extended back to 9. SMU never got it closer than 7 the rest of the game. And I think it's in great part due to what Mason Gillis did in that stretch. He only had one other bucket in this game. It was this pretty transition dunk. That's something Duke does really well, is share the ball at times, man. I just really thought, though, that these two were critical. Number 2 in our Natty 5, Duke's defense. Once again, it's the story, as it needs to be all season long. Why? Offense comes and goes, but defense travels everywhere. And as long, as tall, as disruptive as the Duke defense is, with Maluach, I know he's not like a blocks monster, but man, he affects so many shots. It takes me back to a lot of Derek Lively's stuff a couple of seasons ago, right? Where there were games, yes, when Derek Lively went absolutely off, swatting everything in sight. But even when he wasn't, just his mere presence and the threat of what he could do in the lane was enough to make people shake in their boots. I think that that's kind of the same here with what is going on. And so love it. Currently, Duke defense 3rd at KenPom in defensive efficiency. The big storyline with this coming in for me was it's like a strength against strength, and something's got to give. What's going to give out? Because Duke comes in as the ACC's number 1 scoring defense. SMU comes in as the ACC's number 1 scoring offense. 87.2 points per game for SMU, man. That's well done, SMU. Mustangs, you're killing it. Unfortunately for them, Duke holds them to a season low 62 points. Yes, less than Virginia. They scored against Virginia. That's what this Duke defense can do to even what is currently the highest scoring offense in the ACC. SMU was held to 34.3% from the field on 23 of 67 shooting, 23.8% from 3 on 5 of 21. I mean, just rendered them unable to do much. And look, SMU didn't help themselves either. They got to the line 25 times, which is a really good number, man. If you can get to the line 25 times, you're like, all right, feeling pretty good. Maybe we can make 20 of those and get a bunch of buckets. Here's the problem. They didn't help themselves on these freebies. SMU was just 11 of 25 at the line. I don't care whether you're at home, road, neutral, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Australia, wherever you're playing this basketball game. If you can only go 11 of 25 from the free throw line, you are not going to win. And yes, though, making 9 more of those to get to 20 of 25 does not even put you back. It's still a blowout, even with that. But it makes it much more of a conversation, and SMU wasn't able to do it. Meanwhile, while SMU is shooting all those poor splits, the Blue Devils 53.2% from the field, 40.7% from three, and 75% from the free throw line. All the discrepancy you need is right there. Anyway, back to Duke defense. No Mustang who took more than one shot a field goal percentage over 50% in this game. Johan Traore was even, shot 2 of 4 from the field, 50%. Literally, the other 4 starters combined to go 17 of 45. Duke defense, man, it just keeps showing up. Number 3 in our Natty 5, Sion James. We already mentioned it. Game high 7 assists in the first half. Game high 8 total assists in the game against just 1 turnover, man. Again, so impressive. This is one off his career high. He did have 9 once earlier in his career, but this was a Duke career high for him with 8. And in fact, if I remember correctly from looking, let me pull back up his that 9 was against Temple back in March of 2022, so a long time ago. Let me look at his previous Duke assist high one more time just to see what it was. 4. Yeah, he doubles his high for this season in assists. He had 4 3 different occasions, but if Sion James can do this, I think it's so important. Like, yes, we're not going to expect him to get 8 assists a game after game after game. But if he could be 4, 5, 6 with consistency, with just 1, maybe 2 turnovers, I just think that puts this club in infinitely better position than they can already be in. But I love to see the various ways that Sion James can affect winning. Number 4 in the Natty 5, Tyrese Proctor gets back to doing what he was doing earlier this season from deep. Not that he's fallen off, but he had cooled off a little bit. Here's what I mean. Tyrese Proctor in this game, 14 points on 4 of 7 from deep, also added 6 rebounds, 3 assists, just 1 turnover. You combine that 3 and 1 with the 8 and 1 of Sion James, that's 11 and 2. Come on, man. Killing me with that. As for Tyrese Proctor, in the first 5 games of the season, no, check that. In the first 7 games of the season, he had 3 or more 3-pointers on 5 different occasions. So 5 of the first 7 games of the season, Tyrese Proctor had hit 3 or more threes. In games 8 through 13, he had not had a single game with 3 or more threes. And then he comes back and goes 4 of 7 in this game after being 2 of 9 in the previous 2 games. His percentage had dipped closer to going under 40%. Oh, woeful. No, it's still great. 40%, even if you drop to 38, 39 as the season wears on. So what, man? That's phenomenal. But had dipped close to that 40.3% after that 2 of 9 in the last 2 games. But then right back up to 41.7% thanks to going 4 for 7. Man, it's so impressive how Tyrese Proctor has really rounded into form with that this year. Also, love the rose on Saturday. What'd you think about the hair? Did you like it? I liked it. I thought it was rad. I did miss his kind of signature puff, but whatever, man. I can get behind it. But also, Tyrese Proctor is doing this while shooting at a really high volume. He's one off the Duke high in terms of 3-point field goal attempts, one behind Con Knipple. He's the second leading 3-point attempter on this team, and yet shooting 41.7%. That's fantastic. Even Isaiah Evans, yeah, he's shooting 50%, which is great, but he's doing it on 32 fewer attempts. And so much respect for what Proctor is bringing. And then 5th and finally in our Natty 5 is turnovers. Just 7 turnovers for the Blue Devils in this game. As we mentioned earlier, 3 of those were to Cooper Flagg. You want to keep finding ways to cut down on those if and when you can, but no other Blue Devil had multiple turnovers. 4 different Blue Devils had 1 turnover for this game. I meant to check. Let me do that in real time. Kind of turnover stuff for Duke as a team. Yeah, averaging 10.1 a game. That's 329th in the nation. You'd like to see that better. And so doing this, coming down in that way, I think this was tied for the 3rd fewest turnovers in a game this season for Duke. And I think part of that it's just the youth, the amount of minutes the youth for Duke is playing. Yes, they're the wildly experienced transfers that come in to help. Plus, you get Proctor with some more experience, Caleb Foster with a little bit. But you just want to see that continue to grow. What is the turnover percentage for Duke? Yeah, 15.1%, 43rd in the nation. That's not that bad at all. So it's just the kind of average of turnovers a game that's low. And so to get 7 here, really pleased with that number. And I think Coach Scheyer was from afar, I'm sure. Now, I always like to do a shady stat of the game. I mean, it's my name. I got to lean into it, right? Isaac Schade, shady stat. We'll get to that. Plus, take a look at what's ahead for Duke and what we can expect going forward. All that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Game Time, attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. We got the semifinals coming up this week, man. It's going to be electric. And man, just thinking ahead to all the possible upcoming things for Duke, man. Like it seems like this is one of those seasons where there's going to be a lot of great postseason hype and expectation. Can you just imagine using Game Time to get to some of those moments, man? I'd encourage you to go snatch up some tickets. And with Game Time, there's this new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to those events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to help you find just the very best opportunities for tickets and options. Recently, I used Game Time Picks to help buy tickets to go see Dude Perfect on tour with my family. I've got 2 kids, and man, they're all ate up with it, and I'm so excited. Was able to use the views from the seat right there in the app, and was like, yeah, man, these tickets look great. Let's snatch them up. Great stuff. Tickets for tomorrow, Duke versus Pitt. There aren't many tickets available, but there are some good deals. You can get in the door for $117. There's a lower level sideline general admission ticket for $122. Snatch it up, man. Go check out this game. Always fun when Coach Capel comes back to Cameron. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. It's time for my shady stat of the game. I like to bring out one stat that I think is just really critical and a big part of why a team won a game. And for this one, it's points in the paint. Duke almost, not almost, I guess 6 points shy, but comes pretty close to doubling up SMU in points in the paint in this game, 42-24. And that's not just about getting the ball in the post and scoring. That's penetration, that's getting to the rim, all these moments. And so Duke just kind of owning the paint in that way was really big. Also, this is actually one in favor of SMU, but I was so bewildered by it, but that I had to add it in as kind of a shady stats of the game part mini point. Offensive rebounds for SMU. Do you see this? Duke led the rebounding battle 42-41 overall. But when I started looking at the breakdown of offensive and defensive rebounds, look at this. SMU had 21 offensive rebounds. They had one more offensive than defensive rebound. It was such a bonkers number. I was like, I'm looking at the box score incorrectly, right? Like, surely this is not the right number. And I looked back again. I was like, no, 21 offensive rebounds for SMU. I know that that's an area that Coach Scheyer is not going to be as pleased with and pleased about, but it's always nice when you can get a blowout win and still have stuff to work on with your team of finishing off those defensive possessions with the rebound. Critical stuff there. A little bit of a look ahead and then a big picture look for the Blue Devils. What's nice is after this road game off at SMU, coming off of that, 2 of these last 3 games have been on the road in ACC play at Georgia Tech, another walloping, by the way, then hosting Virginia Tech back last Tuesday on New Year's Eve. I guess, truthfully, another walloping. There's a storyline emerging here for Duke, and all of these scores have been pretty close. Now that I'm thinking about it, I hadn't even caught that. But now Duke gets a little bit of respite, 3 straight ACC games in the friendly confines of Cameron Indoor. As for those games, it's tomorrow, as we've already said, hosting Pitt. Always great to have Coach Capel come back. Notre Dame on Saturday. Of note, Marcus Burton came back for the first time. He's been hurt for a while. You might remember him, the reigning ACC Freshman of the Year. Had gotten hurt against, I want to say, Rutgers earlier this season in their MTE. That's what it was. And had been out for quite a while. Hadn't even started working his way back into the rotation, and then played in their game Saturday. And so be on the lookout for that, because he changes the complexion of what Notre Dame does. And then next Tuesday, Miami comes to town. And if you haven't been paying attention, hopefully you have, but Coach Larinaga just up and retired out of the thin air last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago now. And Miami's bad, y'all. Very, very bad. Like, Virginia Tech is maybe the worst team in the ACC, and they just beat Miami over the weekend. That's what we're talking about. So that's what's coming to town. Pitt, yes, is a bit of a challenge. Shouldn't have any problems with Notre Dame or Miami. And so, look, big picture, the Blue Devils now 12-2. Obviously, just the losses to Kentucky and Kansas. Fine, whatever. Doesn't bother me a bit. Blue Devils are 4-0 in the ACC. And as I start to think about what could happen with Duke, this is the 5th season where the ACC has had a 20-game slate. It would have been the 6th were it not for 2021, where teams, because of all the COVID cancellations, just didn't get to 20 games. The ACC regular season champ in those 4 20-game slate seasons, FSU was 16-4 in 2020. Duke was 16-4 in 2022. Miami and Virginia tied at 15-5 2 years ago. And then last year, North Carolina set the ACC regular season record with 17 wins. The first time in a 20-game slate, at least, we've had a team get up to as many as 17 wins, 17-3. That's the best mark in the 20-game slate. I think that's in very serious trouble. Part of that is because of how good Duke is. Part of that is because who's going to challenge them in the ACC? Clemson, maybe. SMU, we thought maybe. No. And as for, I'm trying to look, I can't remember with Clemson. Duke has to go to Little John Coliseum, and I don't think Clemson has to come to Cameron. So that's a thing to watch. Louisville looks good, but you know what already happened? Duke already went to KFC Yum Center and beat them. I mean, look, I don't think Duke is going to have any problem with Carolina. Obviously, I personally hope that's not the case, but the reality is that it is the case. I just do not see Duke dropping many, if any, games, as long as they can stay consistent. That's going to be the key when you have so many freshmen. But there's nothing to show that they're going to be unwavering. And if there are issues, the upperclassmen, particularly the transfers, I mean, Mason Gillis is coming off a trip to the national championship game with Purdue. These dudes know what it takes and know how to be consistent. And they're not going to let the freshmen have all that up and down. So legitimately, I legitimately think Duke could wind up with 18 or 19 wins this season. I don't know what would stop that from happening outside of themselves. Maybe that's a good way to say it. I don't think external forces would stop Duke from getting to 18 or 19 wins. But internal sources could. So I guess that's the thing to watch for with that. Right now, Duke is just one of 2 teams in the nation that top 10 at Ken Pom in both offensive and defensive efficiency. Iowa State is 8 in both. Duke right now is 10 in offensive, 3rd in defensive. As for the rest of the ACC right now, Duke, Clemson, Pitt are the lone remaining undefeateds. One of those is going to change on Tuesday night. I'm guessing it's going to be Pitt. And Duke and Clemson, by the way, are 4-0. Pitt is 3-0. And then both Miami and Syracuse are winless in the ACC. Again, I already talked about how bad Miami is, but Syracuse also 0-3. It's just weird, man. It's weird to see. And this is what's bringing the ACC down as a conference. It's got to get better. Legitimately, I do believe the ACC regular season record is in jeopardy. I will be disappointed if Duke doesn't get to 18 or 19 wins. At Ken Pom, Duke is favored in literally every game the rest of the regular season. In fact, the closest line, the closest spread is -6, and that's that game at Clemson. Also, in that game against Illinois on a neutral court right now is Illinois -6, Duke -6 for that one. It's not even close in any of these games. Even the regular season finale at North Carolina, Duke is favored by 8 in that game at Ken Pom. So I don't think perfection. I mean, you'd love perfection. It's just the way college basketball goes. Duke is going to get clipped at some point. Somebody's going to do it. I don't know that we can look at it and guess who. I mean, because it's just going to be a random night when something's off and it's not going to work. It just happens. That's college basketball. But I don't expect that to happen more than once, maybe twice, to trap up this Duke team. Quickly, around a couple other Duke athletics actions, the Duke ladies slaughtered Pitt. Speaking of Pitt, slaughtered Pitt on Sunday, 69-31. Yikes. Ouch. Way to go, Duke ladies. That's great. And then on the football front, if it's all the same to everyone, can we just pretend like the Gator Bowl didn't happen? Ole Miss wins this thing 52-20. And I gotta be honest. I don't know about you. I just don't care about non-CFP bowl games all that much anymore. I was already feeling that way, and now with the expansion all the more. So I'm just like, everyone's opting out. Hardly anybody's playing. This is just a glorified like spring scrimmage kind of game, you know? It's like about the extra practices for the guys who are playing. It's about auditioning for next year. And yeah, I watched the Gator Bowl, sure, but with Miss gone, with Malik Murphy gone, but with Jackson Dart and so many of the Ole Miss's players lining up, it's like, well, yeah, this is going to be a blowout. I mean, like, what do you expect? This game was 42-7 at one point, as well it should be, given what was going on with personnel. And I say, who cares? So there's that. Anyway, reminder, Duke hosting Pitt tomorrow. That's the next action going on. And if I remember correctly, my co-host on Locked On College Basketball, Andy Patton, is going to be with you all on Wednesday to unpack that game. Hopefully another win for Duke. We'll check it all out. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a joy to hop in to fill in for JJ. Thanks for allowing a Tar Heel to come be part of your world today. I just love college basketball in all its forms. And so, man, again, so much respect for the Duke program and this team, man. I'm very excited to see what they can do this season. I'm all in on it. Unfortunately, right? Like for Tar Heel folks, but such great stuff. If you haven't already subscribed to Locked On Blue Devils on video and audio, make sure you do that so you catch all of JJ's great work. Follow him on Twitter and all those other places. Thanks again so much for making us your first listen or watch of the day. I'd also like to encourage you to check out Locked On College Basketball, where we are talking about all these things at the big picture national level. We have shows Monday to Friday, just like Locked On Blue Devils. Plus, we do Saturday game night, Locked On College Basketball Saturday game night, where we just recap everything that happened on Saturday. Man, it's a lot of fun. Well, hope you guys have a great day. Thanks again for letting me be part of it. Thank you, and good day.